So we'll see. Alright, so new stuff. Alright, so markups and markdowns coming along for the ride. There's a P in there, I swear. Alright, so let's suppose that I was a failed mathematician instead of one that actually succeeded. Failed mathematicians, folks, what they become? Artists. If you're not good at math, folks, you can always do art. Apparently that's how it works. So I became an artist. So I am a painter. So I didn't finish my degree, and instead I joined a commune, and I painted for the group of people that I lived with, right? And I was a good farmer too. Farming is good, always good. Anyway, so I'm a painter. I paint a self-portrait. And it's amazing, of course. And I'm selling this self-portrait at a Madison art fair for $850. And the only reason I picked that price is because I walked around the other booths that were selling, paintings and stuff, and that's pretty much what everybody was selling stuff for. And I was like, oh, okay, $850 it is. I had originally priced it at $250. $2.50.
Big higher.
but I figured I'd better stick with the norm. So, as I'm sitting in my booth, painting away, or trying to sell my painting, guess what?
Somebody marks down their price.
Yeah, I didn't sell my painting. In fact, I didn't sell any of my paintings. So what do? I mark it down, right? I mark down is an N. I mark down my price by 20%. I keep trying to sell my paintings. I start to sell a little bit of stuff, but it's all the small things, not my centerpiece, which is the portrait of me smiling. Still doesn't sell. The whole first day of the art fair doesn't sell. So the start of the second day, guess what I got to do? I mark it down another 15% by price the next day. During the art fair, luckily or unluckily, depending on how you look at it, there was an accident in my booth, and my ear got magically cut off. And instead of being Marshall Month, I became Marshall Van Gogh. And now that my ear is cut off and my self-portrait is now not a self-portrait anymore because I'm missing an ear, guess what I do? I mark up the price of my painting now because it's got to be worth more now that I've mutilated myself, right? Worked for Vincent, right?
Why did you cut off your painting?
Well, I was trying to sell stuff and I tripped over a grate and there was a saw right there and I just happened to. So, I then mark up my painting, mark up 68% by price. And of course, after I do that, right, or because people know that the price is just going to go up more if they wait, they step up and actually buy my painting. How much did I sell my painting for? So, when you have multiple markups and markdowns by price, in theory, we can do this problem by doing it in 3 steps, right? We can say, it was $850. When I take 20% off, what am I going to do?
Multiply by 0.20.
Multiply by 0.2
Multiply.
and then subtract,
or
right?
Subtract.
Right.
Can we just use the complementary and?
We could just use the complement, right? Remember, a mark down, folks, taking a percentage off by price, that's just exactly the same as getting a discount, right? So if in chapter 7 you could calculate a discount by multiplying by the complement, that hasn't changed. Go ahead, use your knowledge from before, right? Again, this has to be a markdown by price, though. If it's a markdown by cost, that doesn't work. Because we don't know how much it costs, we would have to go find the cost, and that would be a pain in the ass. Let's not do that. All right? So, if I mark it down again, what can I do? Do the complement again, right? So I have the first two steps, right? I could say, great, I'm going to take 850, multiply by the complement of 20%, 80.8, and then multiply by 0.85. Now, darn. When you mark up something, we might think it's divided by the complement, but that's not quite right? So let's think about that one for a second. When you mark up something by price, so if the price is $20, and I mark it up 50% by price. Mark up 50% by price. How are you going to do that?
Times it by 0.50.
Times it by 0.5. What's half of 20? 10. And then what am I going to do with that $10? Add it back to the original. Add it back to whatever the whole price was before. Right? So we're going to take our rate and we're going to multiply it by it and then add it back to it. And here's where it gets a little bit tricky, right? This is $20 plus $10, or it's the whole, which is 100%, plus the 50%. So it's not quite divide by the complement, but instead it's multiply by 1 plus the rate instead of 1 minus the rate. So, we start with our original price. To do our two markdowns, we know from chapter 7 that we just multiply by the complement. From chapter 8, what we discover is that here, the last thing you do is you multiply by 1 plus the rate. So when you have multiple markups and markdowns, it's 1 minus the rate for a markdown, 1 plus the rate for a markup. So these are all 1 minus the rate because they're markdowns. This, since it's a markup, is 1 plus the rate. So, crank all that out. What did I sell my painting for? Nice. Of course, that self-portrait probably took me a month to paint because I'm not really good at painting. So, if you think about it, a month's worth of time for $970. Am I going to make it as an artist?
Starting one.
Yeah, true. All right, so let's try another one then. And now that you know the methodology, and again, you can do this the old-fashioned way if you want. There's nothing wrong with doing it the slow way, right? You could say, take 20% off of this number, right? Take 20% and subtract. And then whatever you get, take 15% of that number and subtract. Nothing wrong with it. And even doing the last one, say, once you get that new price, take 68% of that number and then add. That works, okay? There's nothing wrong with doing it, the tried and true method. What I'm trying to show you, though, is that there's an easy way to do it, all right? Take the shortcuts when you get it. All right, so now I'm selling a computer, whatever. price starts at $725. Okay. I mark up 15% buy price. Then I mark down 10% buy price. And finally, mark down another 5% buy price. What's the price of this computer going for right now? All right, so my price. How do I handle the markup by 15%? 1 plus the rate, right? How do I handle a mark down by 10%? That's 1 minus the rate, and then another mark down by 5%, 1 minus the rate. Do not make the standard student mistake that says, oh, but if you marked it up by 15 and then marked it down by 15, what's the price? The same. Is it the same? No. When you multiply all these numbers out, what does the price wind up being? It's close to the same price, but it's not exactly the same, okay? Again though, markups, 1 plus, markdowns, 1 minus. Again, note that all of these markups and markdowns have to be by price. If I slipped in a by cost on you there, you should throw rotten fruit at me because that's really mean. None of you walk around with rotten fruit, do you? All right, so. One of the other things that you may run into when you're working with your different types of business ventures is dealing with perishables, or what I like to call the bake sale example. All right, so the idea here is that you're going to start some sort of a bake sale that states, I'm going to, raise a certain amount of money for my favorite charity, right? Pick your favorite charity, right? Suppose it's your church, maybe it's for, for cancer, whatever, right? So pick your favorite charity, but you're going to start a bake sale. So you're going to make cookies, you're going to make brownies, you're going to make cupcakes, whatever you're going to make. And then you're going to sell those brownies, and whatever profit you make, you donate to wherever, right? And if your favorite donation is yourself, well, that's okay too. Right? So, how does it work? Right? How do we set the price for our goods to make a desired profit? That's the question we're trying to answer when it comes to this particular example. Okay? Basically, it's what kind of price do we have to ask for if we want to get a certain level of profit. All right, now, how do businesses do that right now? Oh, supply and demand, yeah, true. I would love to give you an economic question, but you'd probably kill me. So instead, we will keep it relatively safe. The process to do this is a 3-step process. The first step in your process is to figure out how much money you need to make, or how much revenue you need to make from selling all of your items. How much money do I need to collect? And there's one little minor caveat on these sorts of things. Remember to cover costs first, then earn profit. Right, so when you're making stuff, or when you're selling anything really, folks, you have to have spent some money to get it, or at least some time, whatever. And those things need to be paid for. So when you're calculating how much money you need, calculate your cost, and then calculate your profit, add those two numbers together. Step 2 is to figure out how many items do I sell. So when you're making your cookies, cupcakes, brownies, what have you for the bake sale, you're going to know how many you're making, right? So maybe you're going to make 10 dozen cookies, right? Are you going to sell all of those 10 dozen cookies? Why not? Some of them don't turn out right. We wouldn't eat any of our profit away, would we? True, probably the ones that are bad we are going to eat. But the idea is, how many items do I sell? Remember to take into account how many, quote-unquote, perish. Hence the phrase perishables, right? Because cookies, cupcakes, and brownies are perishable. They may fall on the floor, in which case you will throw them away, or feed them to the dog, or your kids, or your spouse, whatever. And then some of them you will just accidentally trip, and they will fall into your mouth, and those ones are always an accident, right? Because you wouldn't steal your own profit. But the fact remains is, make sure you subtract off any that are going to get lost, or in this case, perish. And then the third step, and this is the really, really, really hard step, if you know how much money you need to make, and you know how many items you need to sell, to figure out what price to set the items, it's just money divided by items. So if you need to make $1,000 and you're going to sell 100 items, you will set the item's price to be $10 a piece, because 10 times 100 gets you to your $1,000. All right? So here is your 3-step process. Please note that the book does this a much different way. Okay? The book, in my opinion, makes it really hard to do these problems. And I would like to think that this is really easy. Okay? Not really easy, but at least something that you can see, right? How much money do I need? How much am I going to sell? The price is the division of those two items. All right? So, let's do an example. All right, so I start a bake sale for my church. Right? Church has a leaky roof. I need to raise money to fix the roof, right? We're a little tired of walking into services, and there's a big bucket right outside the front door that's catching all of the dripping water. And the carpet is kind of gross under there, because of course we missed it a little bit. You've all been there. All right. I am going to make, let's do that, 120 cookies. How much does it cost to make a cookie? What do you think? Yeah, just one cookie, cost-wise.
10 cents.
Okay, let's go with that. My cookies cost, let's go with 20 cents. How's that? 20 cents per cookie to make. All right. So that, and realize that this is counting not only the ingredients, but the fact that I have to run the oven and I have to spend my own time. I should, in theory, I should be making a little bit of money for spending time in front of the oven, especially me, because that's a dangerous proposition, me in front of the oven. All right? She lets me in the kitchen, she just doesn't let me do anything. All right, so my cookies cost 20 cents to make. I want to donate, let's say, 200% of my cost to the church. Often when you are doing these sorts of bake sales, you will base the profit that you want to earn on how much money you put up front in the beginning. Okay? That's very common for these sorts of sales that you're running, is to say that how much I spent, the profit is going to be a percentage of that. So that if you spend more, you have the possibility of earning more. That tends to be the way it works, right? If you have money, folks, you get to make more. Welcome to this country. All right? Now, how many cookies am I going to lose? Okay, let's go with 10%. I expect to lose 10% of my cookies to accidents. Some of them fall on the ground, right? Because if I'm in the kitchen, there's going to be problems. And yeah, since it's me cooking, there won't be quite as many being eaten, so you still got to worry about that part of it. All right. So then my last question is, what do I sell my cookies for? All right, so step one. How much money do I need to make? What do I start with? 120 cookies, 20 cents a cookie to make them. How much money am I spending to make my cookies? So I went to the store and spent $24 worth of stuff to make my cookies. That's my cost, right? How much profit do I want to make? 200% of my cost, right? So my profit, or my donation, depending on how you want to look at it, is 200% of that number. What's 200% as a decimal? 2. Two times 24. So I'm going to make a whole whopping $48 donation to my church. Again, I'm not the expert baker, so. Now, again, don't forget that I have to cover my costs and my profit. So the total money I need is the sum of those two. So I need to make $72 when I sell all of my cookies. Right, so I'll pay myself back the 24 bucks I spent, and then I'll take the rest of the money and donate it back to the church. All right. Step 2, how many items do I sell? Am I going to sell all 120 cookies? I had a 10% loss. How am I going to figure out how many cookies I'm going to sell? Times it by the complement. Items sold equals 120 cookies times 0.9. You can take 10% of 120 and subtract. You're going to get the same number. It's no biggie. But I'm going to sell 108 cookies. And then what's step 3 tell me to do? Divide the 2. Sorry about writing on the bottom of the board. Please note that it's number 1 divided by number 2. That work out evenly? Not quite. 0.6 repeating. Again, this is money. So I'm going to essentially sell my cookies for 67 cents each. Now, if you start a bake sale, so you're sitting at, in front of a, a Walmart or you're in the mall or something like that, right? And you're selling cookies for 67 cents a piece. Yeah, exactly. What am I probably going to set the price of my cookies at? I might go to a whole dollar, but I may just say 75 cents, right? Because probably at the mall, there's a bunch of places you can go to buy a cookie for $1, right? Well, maybe not. But 75 cents, that makes it sound like a deal, right? And then you can tell them stuff like, ooh, 2 for $1.50. That works on people, folks. Right? But this is just the minimum amount that I have to set it for to guarantee that I'm going to be able to donate my 48 bucks to the church. All right? Now, you may think, okay, this is kind of a trivialization of the perishables. This actually is what businesses do for real in every market. Now, why would a business that's selling, say electronics, right? So they're selling TVs and computers and iPads and iPhones. Why would they have to worry about some of their goods being perishable? Some of them may be broken, right? They may get returned to them as not functional. Are they going to get paid for those? No. What else may happen?
Break them during shipping and stuff?
Well, if it's broken during shipping, you could probably send it back to the manufacturer and get a rebate on those. But what else, though, might cause you to not get paid for an item? Stolen, right? Crime, robbery, is definitely a part of businesses' calculations. They have to figure out what price to set their iPads and computers at, assuming that 1 to 2% of them get walked off with and not paid for, right? Yeah, that's just part of the game. So this perishable stuff, it's most easily understood in the bake sale sense, but you will do this if you're running a business for real, where the business is not something that's a perishable item, because even though it's not perishable, it can perish.
Would they group for theft and non-working items all together?
Generally, yeah.
Loss?
Yeah, they would say,
Okay.
5% of my items are not going to get paid for, and I'm not going to, they're just going to go away somehow. Right? And again, remember that not every item gets sold at a store, right? Some things sit on the shelf for years, right? Eventually, what do they do with those items?
Down.
They keep marking them down, and they're still not going to sell, right? They throw them away. Yeah, I mean, literally, that's what happens, right? So that's part of their perishables calculation when it comes to setting the price of their items, right? They bought 300 iPads and they paid $150,000 for them. Now, they want to make a certain amount of money off of that $150,000 they spent. How much should it be? Figure out what the price, that amount of money is, divide by the number of iPads they're going to sell, there's your price. That tends to be how businesses set a price, is how much profit do I want to make? And when they start marking things down, what are they losing? Profit. Right? I mean, they have to do it, but again, they have a desired profit margin that they hope to reach if they sell everything that they expect to sell. Right? So this number can, make the price go up and up and up. The more of them that you don't sell, the higher the actual price of the items have to be. All right? So again, it's fun to do it as a bake sale because then it sounds like it's it's fun, right? Because you get to eat cookies and brownies and cupcakes, and that never sucks. But if you think about it, it applies, okay? And it's something that you're going to have to deal with when you go to set your prices, right? So if you guys are going to open up a restaurant, you're going to have to figure out how much profit should I make from every item that I sell. And you have to assume that when you make it, there's a certain amount of cost. And again, you have to build into it the fact that sometimes when you make it, you're not going to sell it, right? People are going to return it and say, no, I'm not going to eat that fish, right? You have to pitch it. That's part of your perishables good, and that makes the price of your fish go up and up and up, right? All right, so. All right, so imagine, if you will, that I run this bake sale, right? And it turns out that I do really well. So I go to the mall, I sell my cookies for 75 cents a piece, and like somebody comes up and is like, okay, I'll buy one, because they're nice, not because they think I'm a good cook. But they eat the cookie and they're like, hey, that wasn't half bad. So what do? Yeah, they buy 2 more, and they're like, ooh, and I'll save money because I'm going to pay $1.50 for them. And, now they're like, wow, those are really good cookies, right? So all of a sudden, now there's a big, huge line, and I sell my, 108 cookies in less than an hour.
Now you gotta mark up the price and make more.
Exactly, right? I go back to my, my wonderful house, and I say, honey, get out of the kitchen. I'm taking over, right? And I sit down and I bake, say, 1,000 cookies. Again, I still lose 10% of them, because
Your wife came back in and ate something.
yeah, and I've got neighbors and I've got friends, and I can't say no to my own cookies either. So anyways, I make another 1,000 cookies. Again, I go out and I sell all of them in less than like 4 or 5 hours at the mall. Because as soon as people see Marshall's cookies, they're like, wow, he's amazing. Okay, maybe not, but whatever. Anyways, I sell all of my cookies. Now, if this happens like every weekend for like 4 or 5 weeks in a row, what might I do? Right? One, I'm probably raising my price, right? My cookies are probably going up to $1 a piece, and people are still buying them. But eventually, I'm like, okay, look, I'm making money hand over fist. What should I do? Open up a store, right? Quit your damn job, boy, and become a cook. So, so I'll go to school here, and I'll get my culinary degree, and I open up my own cooking business. Woohoo! I'm going to make cookies, right? So instead of having a little table sitting at the front of the mall, I buy a storefront, and I open up a cookie factory store, and I start selling cookies, and I'm now selling them for $2 or $3 a piece, because that's what you do at the mall. As soon as you have to sell something, it's always way, way, way up. Anyways, though, I'm making money left and right. And let's say I'm making like $10,000, $15,000 a month in profit, folks.
On cookies.
On cookies. Yeah, I mean, these got to be some good cookies. Whatever, they're selling, okay? I'm not gonna divulge my secrets, right? Just like Coke did when they first created their product, right? So, although, I mean, if my store is making lots and lots of money, what am I gonna do? Hire people to make more. Maybe I open up a factory. Now am I gonna just sell them in one place? No, I'm going to open up another store in the other mall. Are there 2 malls in Janesville? Okay, so I'm going to go to Beloit and open up a store in the Janesville, or the Beloit Mall, right? Is there a mall in Beloit?
I guess you could call it a mall.
There's got to be a strip mall somewhere in Beloit, right?
There's still a couple stores there. It's like 1 or 2.
Regardless, though, I get one opened up in Beloit. It's still making money even in Beloit. So now, what am I doing? I'm expanding, right? When you start making money, folks, when you have lots of profit, if you don't want to pay taxes on that profit, what do?
Expand.
You expand, so that you don't have to pay the government, right? I mean, if you're making $120,000, $150,000 a year, the government's going to come in and say, I want my 40%.
Is this where you go on reality TV and call yourself the cookie boss?
Of course, right? Yeah, you try and sell it to whoever the Shark Tank people are, or whatever it is, right?
You never heard of Cake Boss?
Uh-uh.
Or Ace of Cakes?
No, but I will attempt to open my business. Now, the fact is that I'm growing. I've opened up a dozen stores throughout the southern Wisconsin area. How do I keep track of all of my stores?
You hire me. The accountant.
I don't want to hire an accountant because accountants are expensive, right? And I don't trust them. Now I have to start, writing up quarterly reports, right? I mean, I have to keep track of this as a business. I've incorporated now that I have 12 stores. Now I need to start sending out quarterly reports that say, this is how much money I spent, this is how much money I collected, here's what my actual profit is. I have to start filling out, tax forms left and right. How do I keep track of that? Well, what that gets us to is our last topic.
Oh, that just wasn't a tangent view there?
No,
I was
this
going
is-
somewhere?
we actually were going somewhere because of this, right?
Yeah.
So we want to look at big picture stuff when you're not just running one store, but you're running multiple stores. You want to have each store keeping track of itself. So you should have a manager at every store who keeps track of how many cookies they made and how many cookies they sold and how many of them they broke and all that other kind of stuff. But you have to have a big picture. You have to be able to say to all of your corporate sponsors, or people who have given you money to expand potentially, where their money is, what it's doing for them. All right? So you need to come up with ways of writing up the big picture. So one of the things that you have to do in the big picture is explain all of your costs. And you don't want to break it down into every store, because if you show them 12 sets of numbers, what are people going to do? Yeah, they're going to be like, what the? I don't want to see everything, just give me the big picture. Okay? So what you do is you say, okay, here's how much my business spent on all of the stuff that it was doing. Now, when you start talking about your costs, you break it up into two categories. There are fixed costs. Well, I'll just describe these first and then we'll get to the other ones, all right? And fixed costs in a business, these are costs you pay even if you sell nothing. So imagine, if you will, that I have my cookie store front in Beloit, wherever it is. Maybe it's just a street corner. But imagine, if you will, that I don't sell anything there for a couple of months, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to close this place down. I'm going to fire all the people that work there. I'm not going to make cookies for there anymore. But the fact remains, though, is I still have the store, right? I mean, I signed a 1-year lease. I'm not making any cookies there anymore. I'm not selling any cookies in there, but what am I still paying for? Rent. Mike. Rent. What else do I have to pay for in that store, even though there's no cookies being made or sold? Utilities, yes. Let's make it generic, right? So,
Taxes.
taxes are in there. You should know some of these, man.
Employees.
Well, no, I fired all my employees. That stuff I don't have to worry about anymore, thank God. All right?
Hey, like the water bill is different from the.
Yeah, we're going to throw all those in with utilities. Water, electricity, sewer, all that kind of stuff. What else do I have to pay for?
Maybe their unemployment for firing all of them?
We'll put that in taxes, right? So actually, unemployment taxes are part of what you pay when you have employees, period. But what else do I have to pay for? I mean, if you guys are running any kind of a business, what else do you have to have with that business? Insurance. Ooh, that's a big one, folks. Right? And even though you don't need to insure your employees, right, because you fired them all, you still have to have insurance for the facility that you were renting. Because if somebody happens to walk into my parking lot and trip over one of the parking stalls and break their leg, if I don't have insurance, that's my fault. It comes out of my pocket.
Someone on the horn and walk. It's your fault.
Yes, it is, right? Straight up, right? This is why you have insurance. It's called accident insurance. It's not overly expensive because hopefully you assume most people can walk. But if that person can prove that your parking stall was why they slipped and fell and broke their leg, since it's my fault, I have to pay. Right? So you will have insurance, and that will be a cost that you have to pay. All right. Now, don't forget yourself, folks. Regardless of whether I sell any cookies from Beloit, me as the owner of the entire business, my salary is going to be paid, period. All right? So it's never cut yourself short. Okay. Now, the other types of costs that you have to explain to your investors and the other people that are looking at your business are the variable costs. And of course, these are the other types of costs. Costs you pay for making/selling your products, whatever they are, whether they're hair care products, food products, electronic products, what have you. All right? And what sorts of examples are there that are variable costs?
Supplies.
Supplies, or raw materials, whatever you want to call them.
Shipping.
Shipping, it's definitely in there, right? If you're actually making stuff, you're going to have to ship it to where you're going to sell it. What's the number one? Payroll. Wages. So you got to pay your people. Is Uncle Sam out of the picture?
Nope.
Hell no. Taxes are definitely a part of this as well. And this is more along the lines of unemployment taxes, payroll taxes, all those sorts of things that the government sticks their hand in and pulls out of if you run your own business. It's part of the game. You got to pay it, right? So FICA, insurance, Social Security, all that stuff is in there. The more people you hire, the more people you work with, the more you got to pay that. So what else do you have to pay for if you're making stuff?
Storage.
Storage, yes, right? So if you're going to make a whole bunch of cookies, you may need to store them before you can ship them, right? You're not going to stop making cookies if all of a sudden you don't need to send them out. You're going to keep making them, and you may have to store them somewhere until people say, okay, I'm running out, send me another truckload. And so you go to the storage facility, grab them, drop them in the truck, where you go.
Things like maintenance.
Oh yeah, of course there is. And if you forget that particular piece of the cost bucket, when you do have something in your factory that breaks down, what happens? You don't have the money to pay for it? Don't forget it, right? Note that your utility is definitely a part of your variable cost, right? If you're running a factory, you got to have the power on to run all the machines, etc., right?
What training costs to hire new employees?
Sure. Mm-hmm. If you need to have it, you may need to have a training budget. Definitely a part of most businesses, right? Because you want your people who are selling your cookies to be smiley and to jump around and be like me. And so you have to train someone to be like me. It doesn't just happen naturally.
Does it include like insurance for employees and employees?
Insurance is essentially inside of there as well. You may consider it a part of taxes or wages, but it's there too. And sometimes you will see it as a separate line item, sometimes you won't. It kind of varies from how big the company is and whether or not they necessarily have a whole bunch of employees, right? If there's a bunch of employees, like the state of like BTC, as a company, it definitely has insurance as a line item because it costs a lot to insure teachers because we're sickly. And we break our legs all the time because we trip over parking stalls. All right, anyways though, these fixed costs and variable costs are part of the game that you have to play with when you're looking at the big picture. Now, the reason why I like to talk about these is that when you are running your own business, you usually have one of two goals in running your business. One of your goals is either, well, hopefully most of your goals to make money, but when you're running your business, you are either trying to get your business going so big that someone buys it from you, or you want your business to keep running and earning you money forever, and you don't want someone to buy it from you, okay? How do you go about adjusting these to get what you want from the business, right? Which ones of these are more important to hospital takeovers, right? So suppose, what was one of those companies, big cake companies?
Cake Boss?
Cake Boss, or whatever, somebody with lots of cash floating around with nothing better to do with it. They look at my little cookie company and they're like, we need a foothold in southern Wisconsin. Here's the way to do it. Let's just buy Marshall out, right? How do I make it so that they don't want to do that? The key to selling a business is this number right here. The higher your variable costs are, the worse you look as a hospital takeover company, okay? Lower variable costs are better because that makes you look like you're cheap to run and more highly profitable when you become big, right? Right now I'm just existing in southern Wisconsin with like 5 to 10 storefronts. Cake Boss is going to come in and say, okay, look, you're going to open up 5,000 storefronts throughout the entire state of Wisconsin, and you're going to be huge, and your profit margin is driven by how much it costs to make your goods, right? If it costs you 20 cents to make a cookie and you sell it for $3, that's a nice profit per cookie, right? If it costs you, say, $2.50 to make a cookie and you sell it for $3, do you look as attractive? No. So what businesses do, based on what they're trying to have happen, is play around with these numbers. Because note, some of them are on both sides of the wall. And how sure are you how much of your utilities are fixed and how much of your utilities are variable? Do you know?
Nope.
Of course not. So if you don't want your business to be bought, you take almost all of your utilities and push them into the variable side so it looks like it costs more to make your product. Because then you look less profitable. Are you?
No.
But it's looks, right? You want to make it look like you're only making 50 cents per cookie instead of the $2.20 that you really are making per cookie. Okay? And these games are what businesses do left and right. It's technically against the law. But it's only if it can be proven by someone else who doesn't care. Right? And if you don't care, are you going to go trying to prove it? Of course not. Right? So generally speaking, this is what's going on in the business world. If you want to be sold, you keep moving as many of these up here as you can. You say, all of my utilities are fixed. It doesn't matter. Because I want it to look like I'm making $3 a cookie so that you will come in and buy me so that I can get out of the cookie business and go back to being a teacher. Right? It may happen to you, right? So this is the sort of game that you play when you are running your own business. And again, it's the sort of thing where you have to think about it, right? Now, granted, you may not be doing these sorts of things yourself. You may have someone do it for you, right? Your people. But you need to tell your people, hey, look, we don't want to look like we're a company that should be bought. Adjust the numbers accordingly. They should know when and where to do these sorts of things. You just have to make sure you know. All right? Knowledge is power, folks. In this case, make sure you know what you're doing so that people will do what you want them to do. All right, so now that was just a small aside. The business side of this. And to keep it more in line with the book. So one of the things that the book tries to talk about is something called the contribution margin. The contribution margin, folks, that's just a fancy way of saying profit per item, right? Profit per item sold. And calculating the contribution margin, note contribution margin, how are we going to abbreviate it? CM. All you do is you take the price of your goods, selling price, minus your average cost to make. And this is usually called average variable cost. And again, note, contribution margin. The larger this number is, the more attractive you are as a company because you're making more money per item that you sell. And again, note that it's driven off of your variable costs. So in order to make this number look less attractive, make your variable costs higher. Hence that little argument we had a little bit before. So, this is your contribution margin. Please note that this is purely covering your variable costs. We haven't covered these yet. So another thing that is often reported in a business is the point at which your profit that you make per item covers all of your fixed costs. That's the break-even point. The number of items you need to sell to cover fixed costs. And the cool thing about the break-even point, again, the abbreviation is BE, is you just take your fixed costs and divide by your contribution margin. So if your fixed costs are, $20,000 and you make $2 per cookie, you need to sell 10,000 cookies to cover all of your fixed costs. All right? This is a very standard number that businesses like to see at so that they can tell at what point do I start earning profit instead of just covering cost. All right? All right, so let's try one sort of example of this stuff and see how it goes. All right, so let's dream up my Marshall's Cookie Company. All right, so Marshall's Cookie Company. Well, how about corporation? I've incorporated. Let's see, has $220,000 of fixed costs. Note that I have included my own $200,000 salary in the fixed costs. I really only have $20,000 in fixed costs, but I deserve $230 a year, right?
That's all.
Amen, sister. It costs 75 cents to make my cookies, and I sell them for $3 each because it's, I opened all of my storefronts in the mall, and that's what a cookie goes for in the mall. And of course, my question here is, what is my break-even point? What is the break-even point for my business? So I'm going to be getting reports from all of my different 10 or 12 different storefronts. And I'm going to count how many cookies I've sold in all of them. And I'm going to, have the magic number somewhere and note, once I get past that number, I'm going to start earning profit. Now I have to start looking for, accounts where I can hide my money so that the tax man can't see it, right? So I'll look for Cayman Island accounts like BitRomney, or I'll standard business accounts that money goes to when it doesn't want to get taxed. Again, it may be also expanding my business too, but you're only going to do that if you're getting tax breaks from local businesses, local governments, and right now it's kind of hard to get a tax break from a local government. They're getting a little bit pickier. It was just really easy about 4 or 5 years ago to open a business. Your local government would come in and give you, we won't charge you any taxes for 5 years if you open a business here. And, really? Okay, I'll move there. Right? Run the business for 5 years, and then what do? No. Move to the next government that will offer you 5 years of tax-free service. And yeah. Anyways, let's not go down that road. Okay, so first off, when you're trying to find the break-even point, you need to know what your fixed costs are and your contribution margin is. What are my fixed costs? $220,000. What is my contribution margin? I don't know yet. What do I have to do to calculate it? Selling price minus your average cost to make a cookie. $3 minus the 75 cents it costs to make it. What am I making per cookie? $2.25 per cookie. It's probably too high. Someone's probably going to be buying me out very soon. But of course I want to become a teacher, so I'm okay with that. And then last but not least, you calculate your break-even point. $220,000 divided by the $2.25 per cookie. Give me the whole big glorious number.
97777
7.
point 7777.
Okay. Obviously, the break-even point, folks, represents cookies, not money. Okay? So you're going to lose 2 points on this problem if you round this and give me a dollar sign on it, because the break-even point is items, not money. Okay? You know what the break-even money point is. It's $220,000. Do not tell me that this is a money. This is an item, and make sure that you always round up if you have a decimal. The break-even point is the point where you have covered all of your costs. So even if this number had been 97,777.2134, you would still round it up always. Okay? So on the break-even point, if you have a decimal, you always have to go to the next number past it, because if you round it down, you didn't cover all of your costs. Okay? So in this instance, it seems weird, but the correct answer is always to round it up if you have a decimal, period. Okay? And that, folks, is chapter 8. Homework due on Monday. Monday will be review. We just reviewed for the test that will be on Wednesday. Okay, so Wednesday before spring break, whatever that date is, March something. Test over chapters 6, 7, and 8. Nikki? Turn me off. Just hit the same button.